this is the last 18 verses of the second chapter. It starts with verse 54, where Arjuna asks, how does the person of steady wisdom, how do they walk? How do they talk? How do they sit? What are the qualities of the person who is sthita prajna, steady wisdom? So starting with verse 55 until the end of the chapter, we have this description of the realized soul. Now, to review, this is not to be used to check out other people. We don't hold up, say, is Vinayak realized? Let's see. Is Mike realized? No, does no good to be concerned about the state of other people. This is for us to have as a guidepost for our own sadhana. Now, these qualities are natural and spontaneous for the realized person, but they also imply praxis, meaning you and I can use these verses, and it implies a practice. Now, verse 55 is the first of a list. And almost always when we have a list of things in the scriptures, the most important comes first and then it goes on down. Not always. And so in verse 55, this, in my opinion, is the summation simply of all of yoga. When a person casts off all the desires of the mind, O Partha, and is satisfied in the self, by the self, then they are said to be a person of steady wisdom. Two parts. Let go of the world and soak the mind in Brahman. Drown the mind in the self. So I think we're on verse 58 or 59. Does anyone remember?
I don't.
Mark, do you remember?
Yeah, it's starting 58 today.
58. So will you help us out, Vinayak?
Yeah.
Do you have enough light?
Yeah. Yada samharte chayam kurmo lagavya sarvashah indriyan nindriya trebhyas tasya prajna pratishtha. When like the tortoise, which withdraws its limbs from all sides, he withdraws his senses from the sense objects, then his wisdom becomes steady.
So we have here a description of what we call pratyahara in the Raja Yoga tradition, or uparati in the Shankara tradition. So the yogi needs to learn to withdraw their attention from the sense objects. Now, this is not as difficult as we think. It does not mean that we don't perceive them. Let me give an example. When I was a youngster, I used to love to read. I joke with people that science fiction was my first drug of choice. And I would get lost in a book. And my mother would call us for dinner and I wouldn't even hear it. Or sometimes do you or a friend get caught up on the computer and you're doing something and someone wants your attention and you aren't even aware of it? Who's had that experience? Let's see. This is uparati. So the key to sense withdrawal is dharana. What is dharana? Concentration, the ability to bring the mind to a single point. Have you ever been out to dinner and there you are in a restaurant? There's conversations going on around you, but you tune them out because you're focused on what your dinner partner is saying. So this is the key. So as we learn to meditate, it says we should go to a solitary place. If we can afford it, we can have a meditation room. Actually, in many of the ashrams, the Chinmay Mission ashrams, Swamiji would actually dig a cellar in his kutia, lined with marble. And it was, first of all, it would be cool, but also it would like tune out all the psychic vibrations going on. Most of us don't have that luxury. We may be able to set aside a meditation room. Maybe all we can do is like I do, I have a meditation chair. But that still doesn't keep the world from happening. So my first trip to India in 1988, I was up in Siddhabari and I was studying the text Vivekachudamani with Swamiji. It's like a 6 or 8 week course. And there's forest outside the ashram. I read all these books. I'm going to go into the Himalayan forest to meditate like a yogi. Walk away and I find a rock and I'm sitting there and all of a sudden there's ants crawling. And then somebody had goats off in the corner. And then as the cars come around the road near the ashram, and I just started to laugh. Here I am doing tapas in the forest. And it's just as much life happening around me. It's right here in those days in San Francisco where I live. So we cannot ever avoid life. But if we can bring our minds to a single point in meditation, let life happen. If any of you have ever been to the ocean where there's waves crashing and you want to swim out beyond the waves, if you try to get out on the surface of it, the waves hit you and knock you down. So what do you do if you want to get out beyond the breaking waves?
Go under.
Say louder.
You go under the waves.
Yes. That's meditation. We dive under the noise of life, the sense distraction of life. So this is the subtle meaning of uparati. Now in Vivekachudamani, Shankara says the best uparati is when you're functioning in the world and the sense objects do not create any vrittis in the mind. whatever's going on, just let it pass through. Because we cannot avoid life. Radical, continuous acceptance of life on life's terms. Any questions about this? All right, next verse. By the way, the 5 limbs of the tortoise, it's got a head, 2 front legs, 2 back legs, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. That's what it means. The 5 senses. Going on.
Vishaya vinivartante niharasya dehinaha rasavarja rasopayasa param drushtva nirvatate. The objects of the senses turn away from the abstinent man, leaving the longing, but his longing also leaves him upon seeing the Supreme.
This is a subtle and very important verse. So, in the beginning, what we may need to do is get some separation from the objects of the senses with which we have a compulsive or addictive relationship. For example, those people who may be alcoholic, or they may be smokers and they want to give it up. Yeah, I'm giving up smoking. What's the first thing you've got to do? Put it down. Or if you drink too much, put the plug in the jug. But if that's all you do, and you do it out of willpower, this is called suppression, and it will probably make you depressed. And you'll probably be restless, irritable, and nasty. And your friends will say, for God's sake, go have a drink, out of compassion for the rest of us. But the second half of the verse says, but the desire leaves that person upon seeing the Supreme. What does that mean? The ruthless rule of the mind is the mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy, the greatest pleasure. So if smoking is giving you the greatest pleasure, even if you put the cigarettes down, your mind's going to keep going there. Or any other event or person or object. Now, thank God, God is the most beloved, or we'd all be in trouble. So there's a young man that I'm working with, and he just finished taking a 4-day meditation retreat. It was a Vipassana retreat from a teacher in the Spirit Rock tradition. And he had the direct experience after 4 days of meditating all day long that he had peace, and a sense of clarity and freedom. that was not caused by any external object or situation. It was, in fact, a taste of his own self-nature. Frequently, it can happen if we have the great punya, the great merit, the grace to come in contact with a man or woman of knowledge. And we tune up and tune in to where they are. We get what Swamiji called that borrowed glory. It's so clean, so pure. Even though we go away and we can't go there on our own, that ruthless rule of the mind says, oh, I want that again. And that drives us into sadhana. Then we become a mumukshu, a seeker after liberation. And then there'll be moments in our own meditation where we touch samadhi. We have what the scriptures call Atma Ramana, reveling in the self. Can't stay there. Oh, golly, that was such a great meditation. Why can't it be like that all the time? That's okay. It's part of the process. But let it then be the engine to inspire your continued practice. So I was working with this young man this morning. Before he did his retreats, he was lucky if he'd meditate for 10 minutes a day. We sat this morning for 45 minutes. And he's committing to doing that 45 minutes. And he's got a good job, and he's got a life, and he's in a band, and all, it's not like he's leaving the world, but he's making space for his sadhana. So listen carefully. We are not healed so much by what we turn from, but by what we turn to. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. Very, very famous hymn of Shankara. Love the Lord, worship the Lord. My foolish mind. Think you want people, places, things, and conditions. Buddha, fool. How's that working out for you? It hurts because I'm not getting what I want. That's the world. Buddha. Sad. Bhaja Govindam. Who of you know that hymn? That's Stotra.
Yeah.
Isn't it gorgeous?
Yes.
Maybe after class we'll ask the Alexa machine to play it.
Yes.
It's one of my favorites.
Govinda is Krishna.
Govinda is another name for Krishna. Go means a cow.
Okay.
So Govinda is the cow herder. Got it. He's a cowboy. All right. So very important point. Sometimes we need to get some space away from the object of desire. Not always. But sometimes we have an addictive relationship and we need some space. So here, if you get some space away, then the objects aren't there. But the desire will stay behind. And here Krishna says, yeah, now turn your mind to the infinite. So those of us who are in the 12-step traditions, it's what we call the difference between a dry drunk and someone in recovery. A dry drunk is just given up the sauce, but they're still crunchy. They still have all the irritability. So recovery provides them with the spiritual experience. With that, the desire to drink or use is removed. That's the great promise of the spiritual life. Any thoughts on this before we go on?
Contingent upon,
Yes, go ahead.
yeah, contingent upon daily practice.
I speak a little louder. I have a. Is that Susili?
Yeah, I was just saying that it's contingent upon daily practice. It's just daily reprieve.
Yeah, no, we get a daily reprieve contingent on our spiritual condition, is what it actually says.
Yes, yes.
And that means how much have I turned my life, my will over to God? Does I understand God? Am I going through the process to remove the personal sense of self, my resentments, my fears, my control issues, all those things which block me off? All right, next verse.
Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushaya vipashchitaha indriyani pramithani haranti prasabham manaha. The turbulent senses, O son of Kunti, do violently carry away the mind of a wise man, though he may be striving to control them.
So, here by a wise man, we mean a person who's of book learning only. In the Hindu tradition, we make the distinction between a pandit and a jnani. Pandit, you see the word used on the newscasts, but about the best translation I have for it is a professor. It's someone who's a scholar, who's an authority, usually of the scriptures. Any of you have a better definition for pundit?
Pandit, I think, usually recites the things. I think without having known the proper meaning, recitation is his job.
He recites the things. Yes, that's it. But a jnani, a woman or a man of wisdom, their knowledge is rooted in direct experience,
Yes.
not just book learning. They may be shrotriyam, well versed in the scriptures, but that's not their authority. Their authority is their own direct experience. So here, when Krishna says a wise person, he means someone of book learning only. Now listen very carefully. I am very grateful that you come to Gita. But if you don't meditate and you don't practice viveka vairagya cha, nothing's going to happen. You're a person of book learning only. So hopefully the time we spend here inspires you to abhyasa, practice. So if you're just a person of book learning, then you are still under the throes of spiritual ignorance. Spiritual ignorance has two qualities to it. The first we call avarana shakti, veiling power. The essence of it is the non-apprehension of my self-nature. What's my self-nature? Sachidananda Rupam. My nature is pure existence, pure consciousness, and bliss absolute. But I do not know that. Then comes the vikshepa shakti. The root is kshipati, which means to like throw or like hurl a spear. The mind projects. What does it project? Three things. First, jiva bhavana, asmita, ahankara, has many different names in the scripture. The feeling that I'm a person, most specifically that I'm my body. Second thing, the world of name and form perceived by the senses is other. It's out there. We call this dvaita, dualism. And I am bereft of fullness, and I need people, places, things, and conditions in order to be okay. And the third element, kartavya. Literally, it means obligatory action. But in this context, it means this craving, this wanting, this struggling. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, more, better, different. I had a very vivid dream this morning. I got really angry at my mother in the dream. Enraged at her. God only knows where that came from. But in the dream, I had a dream body, and there was a dream situation, and there was my dream mother, rest her soul. She's been gone since 1999. And this fight that we had. All of that created by my mind. First, avarana shakti, non-apprehension of myself as the waker. Vikshepa shakti, I think I'm the dream body, and I have a dream ego, and there's this dream situation, and struggle. This world is no different. So when I'm under the influence of spiritual ignorance, avidya, ajnana, maya, has many different names. In the Eastern Orthodox tradition, Mike, this is their concept of original sin. We're born into it. We're born deluded. How to get there? There we have the myth. But anyway, same thing. Has qualities of illusion and delusion. So what Krishna is saying here, as long as I think I'm a person, as long as I have Jiva Bhavana. I will project a goal, and I need to follow that goal in order to be happy. Now, this is not about willpower and shutting down and avoiding the world and not caring. It's seeing things as they really are. Ignorance is much like hypnotism. So if you go to Las Vegas and you go to a show in a casino where someone gets hypnotized into thinking they're a chicken, they run around the stage, quack, 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 quack. And to them, it's real. Have they become a chicken? Hypnotist wakes them up. Oh man, that was so weird. I really thought I was a chicken. You and I. What does the scripture say? I'm doing Mandukya Upanishad with a student now. Oh, great stuff. In the 6th mantra, I think it is, it says, I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. That's what's real. If I tune up the mind, just notice the knower. Who am I? Koha. Chidananda Rupa. I know the form of bliss consciousness. Jiva Bhavana falls because it's not real. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasye nidrani tasya prakya pratishtaha. Having restrained them all, he should sit steadfast, intent on me. His wisdom is steady, whose senses are under control.
Yes. So the former verse, if the mind is focused outward, Kathopanishad has a mantra that says, the Lord created the senses with outgoing tendencies. The senses here we mean the mind. It's its nature to look outward at stuff. But what Gita is inviting us to do, drop my attention from the phenomenal world. Job, relationship, duties, just put them on the shelf for now. And practice this drishya viveka, this discrimination between the seer and the seen. I am not the body, I'm the knower of the body. I am not the feelings, I'm the knower of the feelings. I am not the thoughts, knower of the thoughts. who is it or what is it that knows the thoughts and even the space, the quiet between the thoughts? Now it's tricky because you will never see yourself go by as an object. Who sees the phone? That's yourself. You don't have another self. You don't have a higher self, a supreme self. Ekam Sat, one existence. My problem is I have not paid attention to it. So I have all sorts of erroneous ideas about it. The basic error is I think I'm my body. But my body is an object of attention. I'm not the body. What am I? Chidakasha, the space of pure awareness. Go looking, have this radical reversal of your attention. Who knows the thoughts and the space between the thoughts? There's a very famous Zen koan, a bell ringing in an empty sky. Just listen to the traffic for a moment. With your mind very quiet. And you see there's no person there who hears it. It's just the sound of traffic moving through the space of consciousness. So when Krishna here says, with your mind intent on me, remember he's speaking from a full state of yoga. A lower understanding of the verses. Oh Lord Krishna, over there, I'm visualizing him with his blue body, and there he is playing his flute, and I'm going to have my mind intent on Lord Krishna. No problem with that. But that's upasana. That's a lower form of practice. When Krishna is talking about himself, he's talking about the self, meaning he's talking about you. I am Atma Brahma. Where is Brahman? Where am I going to find Brahman? Where am I going to find Krishna? Find out who you are, and you will find out who Krishna is. Shorthand form of this verse. Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi. His practice of who am I, Koham. Whatever perception I have, to whom did this occur to me? Who am I? Turn the attention back on the self. A feeling comes up. To whom did this feeling occur to me? Who am I? A thought occurs. To whom did this occur to me? Who am I? Constantly having this radical reversal of the attentive faculty. This is called Atma Vichar. Constant inquiry into the nature of the self. Any thoughts on this?
Yes, Jim, so was I wrong? Because I thought that I found myself when I was looking for God. So I really wanted to know what God's will for me was. And then I kept pursuing, trying to find God. And that's how I found myself. So do I have it
We're
wrong?
saying the same thing.
Okay.
In the end, there's no difference between yourself and God.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's go through these 4 Mahavakyas again. All of the teaching of Vedanta is in these 4 great statements. First one, Prajnanam Brahma. Brahman is consciousness. Ultimate reality is consciousness. It's not a person with a body. It's not an old man with a beard. It's not a statue. Brahman is consciousness. Where is this consciousness? Is it in outer space? Do you have to go up to the top of Mount Kailash? No. I am Atma Brahma. This self is God. This self is Brahman. This self is consciousness. And then the student says, that's a bunch of hooey. I can't even pay my bills. How can I be God? God's powerful. I'm not powerful. God's all-knowing. I don't know very much. How can I be God? And so the 3rd Mahavakya, Tat Tvamasi, is called the Upadesha Mahavakya. All of yoga is implied in that. You have a physical body. The infinite has a physical body, as it were, the whole creation, the Jagat. You have a subtle body, a world of thoughts and feelings and images and memories. The macrocosm has the total mind. The technical word is Hiranyagarbha, which literally means golden egg. It's all the thoughts and feelings that have ever been thoughted and felt and ever could be thoughted and felt. You have a causal body, your particular bundle of vasanas. Listen carefully. The macrocosm has a causal body, the total vasana. This is referred to as Ishvara, usually translated as the Lord. It literally means he who wishes, he who wills. Ichichati is the root. But at the core of your being is Chidakasha, the space of pure awareness. And the ground of being of the whole creation is Brahman, which is consciousness. That consciousness, which is you, that space of consciousness, and that consciousness in which the whole universe rises and falls, they are the same thing. So the 4th Mahavakya, at the moment of insight, the yogi doesn't say, Aham Mahatma, I'm a great soul. Aham Jnani, touch my feet. No, I be so little. It says, Aham Brahmasmi, I am a person of any kind. Does that make it a little clearer, Susili?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, next verse.
Oh, 1 minute. If the whole universe has got desires, then if we also have the desire, then how does it matter? Why should we have desire?
Do you have a personal desire? That's a good question.
Personal desire, yes, I have
You
desires.
think you do? Where did it come from?
From universe only.
Is it yours?
It's universe, self desire.
The self has no desire. That is part of the world of manifestation. That's Ishvara, then Maya, and all these little total mind and stuff like that. The self has nothing. The self is still, immovable. We have to be very sure that we do not attribute to Brahman qualities of the human personality. Brahman has no desire. But in the total mind, in this Hiranyagarbha,
Yes.
there are thoughts, feelings, desires, aversions, all that stuff is there. And one of the things, if I go looking for my mind, I can't find it. All of you know I like really corny jokes. Well, my dad liked really corny jokes. I got it from him. Where did he get it? I don't know. Maybe his dad liked really corny jokes. Maybe there was a professor at school with him. But where did he get it? From somebody. In other words, to whom does the desire belong? You can't find it belonging to anybody. And if you really look at your mind, you can't find a thing called my mind. Now, I'm old enough to know this. I can look at photographs of myself from the 1970s when I had big hair and bell-bottom pants and platform shoes. Well, yeah. And you see movies and you go, oh my God, that was such ugly fashion in the 70s. We thought it was really hot. And now I see all these young guys now and they shave the sides of their head and they let it grow long. It looks like they put some little animal sitting on top of their heads. It's so gross. They think it's really hot. And if I keep paying attention, I'm going to start thinking it's hot. Is it my appreciation, or am I just subject to the group mind? So do you like spicy food? Yeah. People who grow up in the British Isles, they boil their chicken. Nothing has any spice in it. Boring, boring, boring. They eat Indian food. You know? Why do we do that? It's all cultural, all it is. Do I really have the choice, my desire? No. It's just what we're taught. All of you know Amini? Sings beautiful, classic Karnataka music. My Western friends, it's like nails on a blackboard. And I play opera. My Indian friends go, do we really choose? We experience choice. But what yoga says is, where does that karta and bhokta come from? The doer and the experiencer. we find that it's the qualities of mind and past actions as it interfaces with the society. It's all very mechanical. Does that make it a little clearer?
Yes.
Very good question. And Krishna will go into depth on this in chapter 5, part of the yoga, the karma yoga lessons. It's fantastic stuff. There is no individual doer. There's no individual me. It's completely an illusion. Seen, but not real. Now, we have that in our world of name and form all the time.
Yes.
You go to the BART station and you look in the distance, the BART tracks meet in the distance. Seen, but not real. You look up and you see the bowl of a sky and a jet takes off. Oh God, I hope they don't hit the bowl in the sky and crash. No, there's no bowl in the sky.
So there is no karma yoga.
There is karma yoga. It all depends on where we're identified. If I think I'm a person and my mind is under the influence of a lot of vasana, a lot of desires, and attaining a sattvic mind so I can see who I am is difficult, then we have these preparatory practices. In my basic course, Mike's taking the basic course, I use the example of slicing a tomato. Have I shared this with you before? No? Yes?
No.
So if you have a really big ripe tomato, but your knife is dull, what happens when you try to slice it? Squish. So what's the preparatory exercise? You have to sharpen the knife. But sharpening the knife won't slice the tomato. You sharpen the knife first so you can slice the tomato. So for some of us, our minds are dull, like the dull knife. And when the guru says, in the space between your thoughts with your mind made very quiet, introvert your attention and see who you are. Some of us, our minds drop. Oh, there's nothing there. Others of us go, I don't know what he's talking about. I wonder if I should give up eating dairy. You know, am I making sense? And no blame, it just means that there's still a lot of grossness in the mind.
Yes.
So we have practices for those kinds of minds. Bhakti yoga, karma yoga, pranayama, asana. All these are of incredible value. Seva. They of themselves do not take you to the infinite, but they purify the equipment so that Atma Vichara becomes efficacious. Did that make sense?
Yes.
And so, Mike, for you, if you study The Cloud of Unknowing, one of the things the author of The Cloud says, he uses an exegesis of the story of Mary and Martha. Martha's the active life, Mary is the contemplative life. And he says these are to be done sequentially. We do the active life first. So, and if you're a monastic, the active life is you work in the kitchen, you do, your devotional prayers, the liturgy, and all that sort of stuff. Then, when your mind becomes quiet, you can do contemplative prayer, which is the Christian way of saying you start meditating. It's a universal principle. It's a universal principle. So if you read Gita, read the Upanishads, oh, I shouldn't do karma yoga. I haven't got any karma. Well, the self has no karma, but the dharma of the body is karma. It's what a body is. So it all depends on where we're identified. Good question. Very good question. Is this making sense to you, my dear?
Yes.
All right. Next verse.
Dhyato Vishayan Pumasa Sangaste Upajayate Sangat Samjayate Kamaha Kamat Krodho Vijayate. When a man thinks of objects, attachment for them arises. From attachment, desire is born. From desire arises anger.
So now in the next couple of verses, we're going to get the descent of a person, the descent of man. What is it that flings me into the world of suffering? So first, sense object. In the end, sense objects are not problematic. But what happens if I engage in what the scriptures call chintya? Now in Hindi, I think chintya means worry. Is that right?
Mhm.
In Sanskrit, it's a little subtler. It means after the fact, thinking about a prior event, positively or negatively. This is called chintya. So if I move out of the now and I start thinking, oh, that was a great so-and-so. Oh, I really like that person. That was such a great date I went on. Oh, that was so cool what happened at work. Oh, that person really liked what I did. It takes all these different forms. This is thinking about the sense objects. So let's parse the verse, read the first one again.
When a man thinks of objects, attachment for them arises.
Yes. So when I have this after the fact rumination over an experience, and this is positive or negative, the mind starts to develop an attachment, meaning I want to repeat it. I want to do it again. Now, we have a problem with the world. The world is going in its own circle. It keeps changing. Nothing is permanent. All experiences pass. And my mind is going in a circle. I want this, I want that, I want another thing, I want this and that. So this is what happens most of the time. Every once in a while, wham! Oh yeah! And then I want to do it again. And I'm caught in that circle of the world always changing and my mind changing. And the more I want it, and the further away it seems, and the more I start to force the situation, guess what happens to my mind? Krodha. What's krodha?
Anger.
Here is yoga's definition of anger. Thwarted desire, unmet expectation. If I'm angry, it is not because the world is doing it wrong. I'm angry because I didn't get what I want. I had an expectation, and the situation or the person didn't do what they were supposed to do. Don't believe me. Look to your direct experience. Next verse.
क्रोधा भवति सममोह सममोहत् स्मृत विभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रमं सद् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशत् प्रणश्यति. From anger comes delusion. From delusion, loss of memory. From loss of memory, the destruction of discrimination. From destruction of discrimination, he perishes.
Yes. So from my anger, I act on that anger. Almost always, if we act from anger, we're going to regret it. Especially find that in a relationship. How many of us have said something in anger to someone we love, wounded them, and we regret it? Who's had that experience? Kama, karma, krodha. It's the KKK. It's yoga's KKK. It's not the Ku Klux Klan. It's kama, karma, krodha. From that, I do stupid things. I lose my discrimination. Then comes destruction. Personal experience. I used to joke, the epitaph on my tombstone is going to be, F you, I'm out of here. That was my solution to so many things in life. I'm pissed off at you. I quit. And I cannot tell you how many times people say, well, we're glad to see you go. Wait a minute. No job, no money, you know. I've done that so many times when I was young. So many times. Karma. From the anger comes delusion, illusion. Then I mess stuff up. Gosh, destruction. Any thoughts on this? Now, ego always says, I'm angry and I'm upset because of what they are doing. Yoga says, if I am disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the attachment the identification, the klesha, the affliction. That's axiomatic. Now listen carefully. That does not mean that the world and its people are not oftentimes quite wrong. We're not talking about who's right and who's wrong. We're talking about, am I getting angry? Because once I get angry, I've lost my discrimination and I am no longer solution oriented. Now, many people out there in the world, their anger energizes them. They feed on it. I like my righteous indignation. You're welcome to it. Welcome to it. But even Gandhiji, when he would tweak the nose of the Brits, he did it with a cool heart. Understand, Gandhiji was not a pacifist. He was a non-violent activist. There's a difference. Doesn't mean we don't take action. Doesn't mean that we don't work for justice in the world. But if I'm reactive, if I'm disturbed, if I'm caught up in righteous indignation, I am prone to illusion and delusion, and I'm going to be wanting to go to revenge, to hurting other people, which is different than finding a solution. It is a spiritual axiom that if I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the problem. That is perhaps one of the hardest things for us yogis. It's axiomatic. Aren't I entitled to be angry if someone cheats me? You can do anything you want. But is that going to solve any problems? Shouldn't I walk up to them and tell them off? Well, you might get farther along if you try having a conversation. Any thoughts on this? All right, this is a good place to stop. What's our verse for next week?
64.
64. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.